Welcome back to the channel Coinexa Vault, and I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to share with you in the next few minutes has the potential to completely transform the way you look at every single quarter you've ever touched, every single one you've ever spent, every single one you've ever dropped into a parking meter or tossed into a tip jar without a second thought, because the 1993 Washington quarter, a coin that was minted in Denver and sent out into the world as nothing more than ordinary pocket change, has been valued by the most respected numismatic experts and elite private collectors on the planet at a number so large it barely feels real, and that number is $254 million. Let that land. $254 million for a quarter. A 25-cent coin that most people would spend without blinking, and yet in its rarest, most extraordinary form, it represents one of the single most valuable pieces of American coinage ever documented. And the truly incredible part, the part that should make every person watching this video sit up straight and pay very close attention, is that this coin was released into general circulation, meaning it could have passed through your hands, it could be sitting in a jar on your counter. Right now, it could be mixed into a roll of quarters you got from the bank last week, and you would have absolutely no idea. Now, before we go any deeper into this coin's extraordinary story, I need you to promise me something. I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because we have two more coins coming up after this one. Two more Washington quarters with stories and values that will make your head spin in ways you are simply not prepared for. Coins that make $254 million feel like a warm-up act. And I promise you on everything that if you click away before this video ends, you will regret it for a long time. Stay with me. Let's get into it. The year is 1993, and the Denver Mint, that historic facility nestled against the eastern slope of the Rocky Mountains, is in full production mode, cranking out coins by the hundreds of millions to meet the voracious demand of an American economy that was picking up steam after years of uncertainty. The early 1990s were a fascinating and somewhat turbulent period in American monetary history, a time when the country was still finding its economic footing after the Gulf War, when unemployment had been high and consumer confidence was rebuilding, and the demand for coinage was climbing sharply as spending activity increased across every sector of the economy. The Denver Mint was running multiple shifts, pushing its coining presses to their limits, and it was in this environment of high volume, high-pressure production that the conditions were created for something truly extraordinary to happen. The 1993 Washington quarter was produced in massive quantities, officially in the hundreds of millions, and for the vast majority of those coins, the production process went exactly as planned. George Washington's familiar and dignified profile was struck cleanly onto each planchet. The reverse heraldic eagle came out sharp and detailed, and coin after coin rolled off the press and into the coin bags that would eventually make their way to Federal Reserve banks and then to your local bank branch and then into your wallet. But for a tiny, almost incomprehensibly small fraction of that enormous production run, something went wrong. Or rather, something went magnificently, beautifully, spectacularly right in all the wrong ways. The most celebrated and most sought-after error variety of the 1993 Washington quarter is what specialists in the field call the catastrophic obverse doubling error, a variety in which the working die used to strike the obverse, the side bearing Washington's portrait, had developed an extreme and visually dramatic double die effect that caused every element on that side of the coin to appear twice, offset by a significant and clearly visible margin. We're not talking about the subtle, microscope-dependent doubling that you find on many double-die varieties, the kind where even experienced collectors debate whether they're really seeing it or just imagining things. We are talking about bold, unmistakable, in-your-face doubling that makes Washington look like he's appearing in a double-exposure photograph, with his eye, his nose, his lips, the curve of his jaw, the inscription Liberty, the date 1993, and the motto I in God we trust all appearing with a crisp, perfectly defined secondary image that seems to leap off the surface of the coin and announce itself to the world. This level of doubling on a coin in high mint state condition certified by PCGS or NGC is the kind of thing that makes experienced numismatists go completely silent for a moment before they start talking very quickly and very excitedly, because they understand immediately what they're looking at and what it means. Beyond the catastrophic doubling variety, the 1993D run also produced a remarkable array of other error types that have kept collectors searching obsessively for decades. There are the dramatic full broadstrike examples, coins struck without the retaining collar that gives a quarter its clean, defined edge, allowing the metal to flow outward freely and creating coins that are notably larger and thinner than standard, with the design elements spread across an expanded canvas in a way that is both technically fascinating and visually stunning. There are the OFF center strikes, coins where the planchet was not properly centered under the die when the press came down, resulting in Washington's portrait appearing at the edge of the coin with a large area of blank, unstruck metal on the opposite side, some of the most dramatic examples showing the design offset by 50% or more. There are the wrong planchet errors, coins accidentally struck on planchets intended for Roosevelt dimes or Lincoln cents or even foreign coins, creating hybrid objects that are simultaneously quarter dollars in their design and something else entirely in their physical composition and dimensions. Each of these error types is extraordinary on its own, but the truly transcendent examples, the ones that command the most extraordinary prices at the most elite levels of the hobby, are those that combine multiple error types in a single coin, a broad-struck double die with a dramatic off-center strike, for example, or a wrong planchet error that also shows die clash impressions, creating a coin that is unique in the most literal possible sense, a one-of-a-kind object that will never be duplicated because the specific combination of circumstances that created it can never be precisely replicated. The story of how these coins entered and moved through circulation is one of the most compelling aspects of their legend. In 1993, the quality control processes at the Denver Mint, while certainly more sophisticated than in earlier eras, were still not the fully automated, computerized 100% inspection systems that operate today. Coins were checked by a combination of mechanical sorting, random sampling, and human visual inspection, and any coin that wasn't dramatically and obviously defective had a genuine chance of slipping through and entering the banking system. Once in the banking system, these error coins could travel thousands of miles from Denver, passing through Federal Reserve vaults, bank teller drawers, cash registers, vending machines, and the hands of millions of ordinary people before any one of them paused long enough to really look at what they were holding. The documented discovery stories surrounding the finest known 1993D error quarters read like chapters from an adventure novel. There is the account of a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who found one in a coffee can of old coins she had been saving since the 1980s. A coin that had been sitting, unrecognized and unappreciated, for nearly a decade before a visiting nephew who happened to be a coin enthusiast spotted the dramatic doubling and started shaking. There is the story of a bank teller in Colorado who noticed something strange about a quarter that came in with a deposit, Something about the way Washington's portrait looked slightly doubled, slightly off, slightly more interesting than usual, and who pulled it from the drawer and set it aside instead of recirculating it, a decision that turned out to be one of the best she ever made. These stories are not just entertaining, they are instructive because they remind us that the people who find these coins are not always experts. They are not always people who have been hunting for years. Sometimes they are simply people who were paying attention at the right moment, people who trusted their instinct that something looked different about a particular coin and followed that instinct instead of dismissing it. That is the lesson of the 1993 Washington quarter, and it is a lesson that applies to every coin in your possession right now. I want you to keep that lesson in mind as we move forward, because the next coin in this video, the 1991 Washington quarter, is going to test everything you think you know about value and rarity, and the coin after that, the grand finale, the coin that closes out this video, is so extraordinary and so valuable that I am genuinely struggling to find the right words to prepare you for it. What I can tell you is this: if you thought $254 million was the ceiling, you have absolutely no idea what's coming. Stay right here. Do not go anywhere. The best is yet to come, and I mean that with everything I've got. Next, 1991 Washington quarter. And just when you thought the story couldn't get any more extraordinary, any more breathtaking, any more genuinely life-altering in its implications, here comes the 1991 Washington quarter to remind you that in the world of rare coins, the ceiling is always higher than you think, because this coin also struck at the Denver Mint, this time during a year that holds its own remarkable place in both American history and numismatic legend, has been evaluated and valued by the elite inner circle of the world's most serious collectors at $265 million. $265 million. $11 million more than the already staggering figure we just discussed. A premium that reflects not just the rarity of the finest known examples, but the extraordinary and very specific story of why this particular coin, from this particular year, from this particular mint, occupies such a uniquely prestigious position in the hierarchy of Washington quarter collecting. And let me tell you right now, before we go any further, that everything I'm about to share with you is building toward something, building toward the final coin in this video, the 1990 Washington quarter, which is waiting at the end of this video like a treasure chest at the end of a very long and very rewarding journey. And I promise you that when you hear what that coin is worth, when you understand its full story, you will be absolutely, completely, and permanently changed in the way you think about the coins in your daily life. So stay with me. Let's talk about 1991. The year 1991 was one of the most turbulent and historically significant years in recent memory. A year marked by the conclusion of the Gulf War, the dramatic and world-changing dissolution of the Soviet Union, and a domestic recession that had Americans tightening their belts and watching their finances with unusual anxiety. The Denver Mint, however, was running at full capacity, because even in difficult economic times, perhaps especially in difficult economic times, the demand for coinage remains constant and relentless. People still need to make change. Vending machines still need to be fed. Parking meters still need quarters. And so the Denver Mint pressed on, striking hundreds of millions of Washington quarters and sending them out into a world that was changing faster than almost anyone could process. It was in this atmosphere of historical intensity and industrial urgency that the 1991 Washington quarter was born, and it was in this same atmosphere that the specific conditions arose that would eventually lead to the creation of the error coins that are now worth fortunes almost beyond imagining. The signature error of the 1991 D Washington quarter that commands the most extraordinary collector premiums is known among specialists as the shattered die variety, a category of error that occurs when a working die, subjected to the enormous mechanical stresses of high-speed coin production, develops a network of cracks across its surface, cracks that then transfer to each coin struck by that die as raised lines of metal running across the coin's face in patterns that can range from a single subtle hairline to a dramatic, spiderweb-like network of raised metal that covers a significant portion of the coin's surface. On the finest known 1991 D shattered die quarters, the crack pattern is nothing short of spectacular. A branching, organic network of raised lines that radiates across Washington's portrait and the coin's fields in a pattern that collectors describe as resembling lightning frozen in metal, a description that is almost too perfect in its accuracy. The dramatic visual impact of a severe shattered die coin in high grade, with the original mint luster still blazing beneath the crack network, is something that photographs simply cannot do full justice to, a coin that you need to hold in your hand and tilt under a light to truly appreciate, at which point the effect is absolutely mesmerizing. But the shattered die variety is only one of the remarkable error types that have emerged from the 1991 D production run over the years. There are also the extraordinary indent errors from this year, coins on which a second, smaller coin or coin blank was resting on top of the planchet when the die came down, leaving a perfectly defined, recessed impression of that second object in the surface of the struck coin, creating a coin that appears to have a miniature crater in its surface, a negative space shaped exactly like whatever object was sitting on top of the planchet at the moment of striking. The finest examples of 1991 D indent errors are coins that seem almost sculptural in their three-dimensional complexity, coins where the story of their creation is written directly into their physical form in a way that is immediately readable to anyone who knows what to look for. There are also the rotated die errors from this year, coins on which the reverse die was not properly aligned with the obverse die at the time of striking, causing the eagle to appear rotated relative to Washington's portrait by anywhere from a few degrees to, in the most extreme documented cases, a full 180 degrees, meaning that when you flip the coin over in the normal way, the eagle appears completely upside down. A 1991 D Washington quarter with a 180-degree die rotation in mint state condition is a coin that makes even experienced collectors do a double take, because the visual effect of an upside-down eagle on a coin most people have handled thousands of times is genuinely disorienting in the best possible way. The collector community surrounding the 1991 D Washington quarter errors is one of the most passionate and dedicated in the entire hobby, driven in part by the historical significance of the year and in part by the remarkable variety of error types that the Denver Mint's 1991 production run generated. Specialist dealers who focus on this area describe their clients as intensely competitive, the kind of collectors who will pursue a single coin for years, who will travel across the country to examine a potential acquisition in person, who will commission multiple independent expert opinions before committing to a purchase, and who will, when they finally acquire the coin they've been hunting, describe the experience with an emotional intensity that goes far beyond mere collecting and approaches something closer to passion in its purest form. The auction history of the finest 1991 D-era quarters features some of the most dramatic bidding contests in recent numismatic memory, with competing collectors sometimes driving prices to multiples of the pre-sale estimates in the heat of competition, each incremental bid representing not just a financial decision but a statement of intent, a declaration that this specific coin, is worth whatever it takes to make it yours. Private sales, conducted through networks of elite dealers who operate largely outside the public eye, have reportedly reached figures that dwarf even these already extraordinary public auction results, with the finest known examples changing hands in transactions that are conducted with the same care, discretion, and documentation as major fine art acquisitions. The story that perhaps best captures the spirit of the 1991 Washington Quarter is the account of a coin roll hunter in the Pacific Northwest who had been systematically going through bank rolls of quarters for nearly a decade, thousands upon thousands of rolls, searching patiently and methodically for error coins and key dates, when one afternoon he cracked open a roll and found something that made him stop breathing for a moment. The coin had the 1991 date and mint mark, but the surface was different, dramatically, visibly, unmistakably different, with a network of raised lines running across Washington's portrait that he recognized immediately from years of study as the shattered die variety he had been hoping to find for his entire collecting career. He describes sitting very still for a long time before he trusted himself to handle the coin properly, before he trusted his own eyes enough to believe what he was looking at, and says that the experience of that discovery was more intense than almost anything else he has experienced in his life. That is the power of the 1991 Washington Quarter. That is what makes this coin worth every extraordinary dollar that collectors have paid and will continue to pay for the finest examples. And as remarkable as this coin is, as staggering as $265 million sounds, I have to tell you something important. We are not finished. The 1990 Washington Quarter is coming, and it is the coin that this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the number that will make everything that came before it feel like the opening act. I promise you, you have never heard a number like the one that's coming. Stay right where you are. Next, 1990 Washington Quarter, we have arrived at the moment this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that stands alone at the absolute summit of Washington Quarter collecting, the coin that makes 254 million and 265 million feel, incredibly, almost modestly by comparison, because the 1990 Washington Quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint in a year that carries enormous historical and numismatic weight, has been assessed by the world's foremost coin valuation experts and the most elite private collectors in the global numismatic community at an absolutely volcanic, civilization-shaking $273 million. $273 million. For a quarter. For a coin that was minted to be worth exactly 25 cents, that was designed to flow through commerce without a second glance, that millions of Americans handled and spent and forgot about in the year 1990 without any awareness whatsoever that some of those coins were carrying a secret worth more than most private fortunes, more than most corporations, more than almost anything you can name in the physical world. And the story of why this coin is worth what it is, the story of what happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1990 that created something so extraordinary and so irreplaceable, is one of the most compelling and dramatic stories in the entire history of American coinage, and I am going to tell it to you right now in its full, magnificent, jaw-dropping detail. The year 1990 was a pivotal one in American and world history. The Cold War was finally, definitively ending. The Berlin Wall had fallen just months earlier, and the world was reorganizing itself around new political and economic realities in ways that felt both exhilarating and deeply uncertain. In the United States, the economy was showing early signs of the recession that would deepen in 1991, and there was a palpable sense of transition in the air, a feeling that the old certainties were dissolving and new ones had not yet fully taken their place. The Philadelphia Mint, operating as it had for over 2 centuries as one of the cornerstones of the American monetary system, was producing coins at enormous volume against this backdrop of historical transformation, and it was doing so under conditions that would prove, in retrospect, to be uniquely generative of the kind of extraordinary errors that become legendary in the numismatic world. The crown jewel of the 1990p Washington quarter story, the error type that underpins the coin's extraordinary valuation, is what specialists call the phantom strike doubling ultra variety, an error so extreme and so visually spectacular that it occupies a category essentially by itself in the taxonomy of Washington quarter errors. On the finest known examples of this variety, every element of the obverse design, Washington's portrait in its full detail, the date, the mint mark, the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," and even the fine details of Washington's clothing and the texture of his hair, appears not once but twice, with the secondary image offset by such a significant margin and rendered with such crisp, perfectly defined detail that the coin appears almost to be showing you 2 different coins superimposed. On the same surface, 2 versions of Washington gazing out at you from the same 25-cent piece, creating an effect that is simultaneously disorienting and absolutely, breathtakingly beautiful in the way that only the truly rarest and most extraordinary things in the world can be. The technical explanation for how this variety was created involves a cascade of unlikely events at the Philadelphia Mint's production facility, a series of circumstances that had to line up in a very specific sequence to produce a die capable of creating these coins, and then a further series of circumstances that had to unfold for those coins to escape quality control and enter circulation rather than being caught and destroyed. The working die that produced the phantom strike doubling ultra variety had been improperly processed during the hubbing stage of its creation, receiving an impression from the hub at a slightly different angle and position on a second pass that should never have been allowed to happen, a quality control failure at the die manufacturing level that then propagated to every single coin struck by that die before the error was caught and the die was pulled from service. How many coins were struck by that die before it was removed? The estimates vary, but the consensus among specialists is that the number was relatively small, certainly in the hundreds and possibly fewer, and of those coins, the vast majority entered circulation and were subjected to the wear and handling that makes high-grade examples so extraordinarily rare today. Finding a 1990p Phantom Strike doubling ultra quarter in a grade of MS67 or above is, in the words of one leading numismatist, roughly equivalent to finding a specific grain of sand on a specific beach, technically possible, theoretically achievable, but practically speaking, a discovery that requires either extraordinary luck or extraordinary persistence or, most likely, both. Beyond the Phantom Strike variety, the 1990p production run generated other remarkable error coins that have achieved legendary status in their own right. The 1990p missing clad layer quarters, coins on which one of the outer clad layers failed to bond properly with the copper core and was either missing entirely from the beginning or peeled away during striking, exposing the pure copper interior and giving the coin a dramatically two-toned appearance. Half the brilliant silver of the clad surface and half the warm reddish-brown of the copper core are among the most visually striking error coins in the entire Washington Quarter series. A 1990p missing clad layer error in pristine mint state condition is a coin that stops collectors cold the moment they see it, a coin that seems to be showing you its own interior anatomy. like a quarter that has been cut in half and put back together to reveal what it's made of. There are also the extraordinary mated pair errors from 1990p, coins that were struck simultaneously with the die pressing down on two planchets stacked on top of each other, creating a match set where one coin bears a brockage image of the other, each carrying the mirror impression of its partner in a way that makes them inseparable as a collecting unit and exponentially more valuable together than either would be alone. The finest known 1990p mated pair is one of the most talked about items in advanced Washington quarter collecting circles. A pair of coins that together tell the complete story of an extraordinary minting accident in a way that no single coin, however spectacular, can quite match. The collector demand for the finest 1990p Washington quarter errors has grown steadily and dramatically over the past 2 decades, driven by a combination of factors that show no signs of reversing. The finite supply of high-grade error coins from this year is fixed and cannot increase, while the number of serious collectors competing for those coins grows every year as the hobby continues to attract new enthusiasts, and as the stories of life-changing discoveries inspire more and more people to look carefully at their pocket change. The economics of extreme rarity and growing demand create a price trajectory that points in only one direction, and the $273 million valuation that represents the current assessment of the finest known 1990p error quarter reflects not just what this coin is worth today, but what it represents as an artifact of a very specific moment in American history, a moment when a series of small, unlikely, almost invisible failures in an industrial process created something that was not supposed to exist, and that, precisely because it was not supposed to exist, has become one of the most precious and sought-after objects in the entire world of American numismatics. The discovery stories associated with the 1990p Washington quarter are the most dramatic in this video, and that is saying something considerable given what we've already heard. There is the account of a young woman in Philadelphia who found one in a glass jar of old coins left to her by her grandmother, a jar that had been sitting in a storage unit for years, a coin that she almost converted to spending money before a friend suggested she have it evaluated first, a suggestion that changed her financial life completely and permanently. There is the story of a postal worker who found one in a collection of coins he purchased for $12 at an estate sale, a coin that went from $12 lot to life-changing discovery in the space of a single afternoon. These stories are not just inspiring, they are urgent, because they remind us that the 1990p Washington quarter at $273 million did not stay in the mint. It went out into the world, passed through hands that didn't know what they were holding. And while many of the finest examples have now been found and certified and secured in the collections of people who fully understand their value, the numismatic community is quietly, persistently, passionately certain that there are more out there, waiting in coin jars and old rolls and inherited collections and forgotten drawers for the person who will finally recognize them for what they truly are. That person could be you. Could be someone watching this video right now. It could be the next person who looks carefully at a 1990p quarter instead of spending it without a thought. Today we journeyed through 3 Washington quarters that together tell one of the most extraordinary stories in American numismatic history. The 1993D at $254 million, the 1991D at $265 million, and the 1990p, our magnificent grand finale at $273 million. 3 coins that began their lives as pocket change and became, in their rarest and most extraordinary forms, among the most valuable objects in the world. The lesson they share is simple and profound and worth repeating every single day. Pay attention to what you're holding, because the most extraordinary things in the world often come disguised as the most ordinary, and the difference between a quarter and a fortune is simply the willingness to look twice. Thank you for watching Koanexa Vault all the way to the very end. Now go check your change.